behalf of the Southwest Seattle Historical Society Board of Trustees and staff, I'd like to welcome all of you to this very special occasion. As all of you know, the family of Doc Maynard has decided to donate a special collection of letters to the Log House Museum. And for a small but mighty organization like ours, this donation has significant meaning on so many levels. So you're going to be hearing about that in our little program today. And we are so deeply honored that the family has, agreed to give us the opportunity to steward these letters. So they're right over here. And but before we get started, I want to introduce our board member and a great-great-great-great-grandson of Chief Seattle. Did I get that right?
Yeah. There are too many grades in there.
To provide a welcome, and as we recognize that we are on Duwamish land. And I get goosebumps when I think about the descendant of Chief Seattle and the descendants of Doc Maynard are all in the same room together today. So that is really, and they were, compatriots and knew each other and had a lot of dealings with each other. So Ken, please, open up the meeting.
Sorry, I apologize for being late. I didn't realize everybody was going to be early. But it wasn't very long ago that we were all together in the form of Doc Maynard and my grandpa, Chief Seattle. Of course, it was just at the end of the block right over here that in 1851, Seattle, my grandpa, he welcomed people here with these words that started with Lalil. This is a native word. It means come ashore. So he says, Lalil disiyaya disha padata Duwabs, which means come ashore, my friends, onto this land of the Duwamish. So if you walk down here a block and then step into the park right there, it's right exactly there that all of that stuff happened. And so in my family tree, we have plaques down there, all big bronze plaques that describe how to build a canoe and stuff. So we're all still here and we're all gathered once again. And so I would say, Hasalav the beat, see the Isha, Disha, look, pud, skoiswa tufted, the, not the, ha,
Don't look at me.
And I had to search for those last words. Ha. It means on this sacred, this ancient, this old land. And so now that we're all back here again, it's my honor and privilege to stand here once again and say, Hatsaslav the Beatsit. It's good to see you, to see ya. My friends, Yuf, the Ishad, and family. Te lok, but on this old land. Te lok, all in this old house. And so, lots of things have happened, lots of change. Dokwaps. Aturituha kadisha, but bak, dok things. Dok stop, change things, bak, all, happened right here. And so it's only been 169 years, and for us that's nothing as Duwamish. We've just been here too long. Doesn't mean everybody else shouldn't be here. We've just been here a little bit longer. A lot longer. A couple of years. Only one ice age.
There you go.
And so, thank you for sharing these papers, these Hala, there it is. Hala stab. At Dagwi Sapa of these papers of your grandpa. And if I'm stammering and stuttering, it's because I'm searching for these words that we couldn't even speak up until just recently. It was illegal.
Oh, right.
First it was illegal in the schools, and then of course when you came home, you just got slapped down into the ground because you didn't want to be speaking any of those native words, speak this new language, this white people language. He couldn't be native for lots of reasons, lots of discrimination. And then, of course, when you're trying to assimilate into a more advanced society, these white people, then you just didn't do that. Your parents would, you know, tell you don't do that. Not exactly like that, but don't do that. So it's an honor to be able to stand here once again and say these words, very same words, that your great, I don't know how many generations, Grandpa heard while he was right here and befriended my great grandpa. Did I get that right? Yeah. Grandpa. And so I found it ironic that here we are all again. And so we're friends with Amy Johnson, who is a descendant of Denny family. And so now here you guys are. And we're all here. So cool. This is a good thing. We're all back together. We also are friends with a local lady here, Ellen Ferguson, who is there's I don't know how many greats there are in there, a couple of them anyway, granddaughter of Isaac Stevens. And so it seems like time just keeps repeating itself. It's stuck in this great big loop and we all keep coming back together. So it was wonderful to stand outside of your house today and have these photos taken and go in this article called Paul Dorpart's Now and Then series. So formally, I would say Thlala Disiaya Disha Parate Yaya Doabs. I have to take my hands out of my pockets for this. Which simply means come ashore, my friends, onto this land of the Duwamish. Gui. You're invited. Gui when there's more than one. So we say Gui Hadak today, which means it's more than a family. It's more than a family of canoes. But today we invite everybody onto this land. So just like my grandpa who stood just right over here a long time ago and said those words, it's my honor to say once again, Gui Hadak Isiyaya. Welcome, my friends, onto this land of the ancient Duwamish, Asiista. And I never say that last part, because Asiista means again. So we're all back together. Thanks.
Thank you.
I know. So I would really like to have the family introduce yourselves, just real quickly. You know, even if you're a spouse, please, let's get to know all of you. So if you just quickly start over here with Mary's husband.
I'm David Frost. I'm married to Mary Broughton, who is a great-great-great-granddaughter. And I'm Chris Broughton, 3 times great-grandson.
I'm Mary Broughton. I'm married to David Frost. Great granddaughter. And I'm Mary's daughter, Kai.
Oh, I'm a fiance to Kai.
Welcome,
Jana. And my brother Eric hopefully is coming back, but my name is Karen Watson, and I'm a great-great-great-granddaughter.
And I'm Mike Watson, her husband.
And I'm Joanne Byer, married to John B. Odstrup. You can introduce yourself.
Who is also a great-great-great-grandson of Dr. Maynard.
Welcome. And do we have any other cousins here? We've been so fortunate that all the cousins came together today to go over and have a picture taken at the Maynard house. So
Impossible.
it was impossible. Anyway, now I'd like to introduce Chris, who's going, you know, the biggest thing we want to know is, where did these letters come from? We want to hear the story. So Chris is here to tell us how he have found them, how they came into his attention, and what you've taken such beautiful care of them. So we would love to have you come up and tell us the story.
Okay. A lot of people up here. Just following Ken, the points that he made about, you know, it just happened right over there. Doc had built a big house here on Alki, and for his son Henry to come out, be the farmer, take it, you know, it's yours. And the house burned down. But before it did, Doc was writing a letter, and he said, the old Indian who I named the city after has just come by, and I can't figure out what he's saying, and I can't figure out what I'm writing, so I'm gonna close now. But that could have happened right here.
Yes.
You know, it's still coming around. And anyhow, these letters, I'm descended from Doc's son Henry, who Doc was trying to get up to come out to Seattle, and he never did. But he kept sending letters saying, you know, you can do anything you want out here. I've got a farm set up for you. You can do it all. And we don't know why Henry never came out, but we don't know why he saved the letters. You know, it seemed kind of like an antagonistic relationship, but Doc loved him, and Catherine loved him, but he just never came out. But why did he save the letters? We just don't know. So these letters were saved, and they were stuck between the pages of a magazine and stored in a non-waterproof shed at Seola Beach down south of the ferry dock. And some of them are in pretty bad shape. But when I was born, I got a birth announcement in the Times, and it said, a new descendant of Doc Maynard has just been born, and my mom's got a quote in there saying, we've got a bunch of his letters. I'm sure Chris will be interested in these someday. And I don't know where, I don't know how they got to Seola. Who brought him out? Maybe Doc's grandson, who came out here and bought the property. We just don't know. But my mom had him, and she would be Doc's great-great-granddaughter. So anyway, that's what I know about it. They were hard to transcribe because some of them are real moldy. But that's what I know.
And then tell us what you did with them, what you've done with them.
Oh, I finally, you know, they'd kind of been, you know how a box of stuff like that will just kick around the family for a while. And when I was about 30, I said, well, let's see what's in these. And I started transcribing them, and it was too good. It was just great stuff in there. And back then, there was no internet, and there was no word processor. All I had was a typewriter, and that's what you do, you know, you just type them out. And they look pretty good for a non-legal typist, you know? Pretty good stuff. And my niece Kai did 2 of them. So anyway, most of them are transcribed. I think there's still maybe half a dozen that aren't. There's still great information to be learned there. There's one where Catherine describes to Henry, well, your father has died. And God, it's a killer. And there's one where Doc acknowledges that he's a grandfather for the first time. And well, anyway, I've got a photo of a middle-aged man who was an old man when my mother was a child, and this is Doc's grandson. So we tied the family tree together from both directions, and that was a huge deal to have that happen. Yeah, this is my great uncle Carl, who was the last Maynard. There were no, a lot of the branches of the family didn't have sons or didn't have children at all. So he was the last Maynard.
Oh, interesting.
And
Anyhow, he's being held by Henry, for whom the letters are
right,
addressed.
this is Doc's son Henry, and Doc's grandson Francis, and my grandmother. Great stuff. And there's a mystery guy standing behind the partition.
There's always a mystery.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So anyway, why don't you, did you have anything
Yeah.
else?
No, we may have some questions after we're finished, but
Okay.
I'd love to hear from Mary.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris.
Yeah. Kathy had asked me to talk about how we came to be doing this now. And so many people have influenced this. And it started with attending the presentation that Paul Dorpat and Jean Sherrard made of their book Now and Then at Paper Boat Books in West Seattle. And they happened to use the photo of Doc's house in that presentation. I don't know if they do it in all their presentations or if just their West Seattle one, or but my friend Nancy Ishii was there also, and she prompted me to introduce myself to them. And so Paul, being the character he is, said, Clay, who was recording the event, you need to exploit this woman. And Jean tested me by saying, oh, so you're descended from Catherine then? Knowing full well that Catherine had no children. And Clay urged me to be in touch with Kathy. So fast forward a little bit, Chris and his wife are going to come and visit from Tucson, and in thinking of interesting things to do, and having purchased this book, this wonderful book for him, got a hold of Kathy, who put me in touch with Rachel and Tasia to come down and let them see the letters. At that time, we weren't really thinking of donating them. We were just sharing them. But the professionalism and enthusiasm, it chokes me up. And it just seems like this is where they belong.
Oh, thank you.
So,
Yep.
Well, I'd like to now ask Tasia Williams, our curator, our wonderful curator, and I'd like to introduce Rachel Regeline, who is our collections manager. And they sat down with you and Chris and talked to you about how they would care for them. And they're totally qualified
yes.
professionally to do that. So it would be great. Well, before Tasia talks, let's ask Phil Hoffman, one of our volunteer curators, to come up and talk a little bit. He's already gotten into the letters a little bit, and he's got some ideas.
Oh, yeah.
Got some ideas?
Some great ideas.
I've had the rare honor and privilege to get a sneak preview of some of the transcribed letters. And there's one letter that I had spent some time with, which I find absolutely wonderful. It's a letter dated March of 1858.
It's that one right there.
Is it this one right here? Well, this one right here. I was given a copy of the scanned version of the transcription of that letter. That letter begins with a date and a reference to the Alki farm, where Doc Maynard was residing when he wrote this letter. And the letter gives a wonderful insight into the relationship of Maynard to his two children, Henry and Francis. if I could be so bold as to suggest it was an estranged relationship, where he very much wanted Francis and Henry to move to Alki and to be with him. He promised them a stipend, but understanding this relationship gives us a new insight into Maynard and his motivations for the things that he did at Alki and in Seattle, particularly his business relationship with Charles Terry. Understanding these motivations, I believe, is an absolute historic imperative to better understand our history today. And I believe working with these letters in a scholarly manner will give us a better insight and an invaluable understanding of our heritage. It's going to be a long process of conservation, restoration, transcription, and distribution of the letters, but it is worthwhile, and the effort will be our children and grandchildren will be well rewarded for that effort. So, Catherine, Kathy hadn't said anything about this yet, and I hope you will indulge me. But as an acknowledgement to the Maynard family, by future historians, current historians, and scholars, and those interested in history, I have a Xerox copy, unfortunately, of the deed from Charles Terry to David S. Maynard that granted the ownership of the Alki land claim that Terry took as his own, and he sold to Doc Maynard for $1,000. This deed, I have no idea where the original deed is, but in those days, things were recorded just like your own home deed is recorded, except that a person sitting at a desk would take the deed that was handed to him or her, and literally write into the book of deeds a copy of the deed. And this is what I would like to give you a copy of. And it says, just for, briefly, for and in consideration of the sum of $1,000, sold, conveyed, and transferred unto said David S. Maynard and his heirs and assigns. Uh-oh. All that certain parcel or portion of land in the county of King and territory aforesaid known as the land claim of the said Charles C. Terry, and more particularly known and described as follows. Transit by a line commencing at a post on the beach. Where is the post? Near the entrance to Elliott Bay in said county, running thence due south 94 and 30 100ths chains. Chains is an old English surveyor's measurement unit, which is 66 feet. A chain is 66 feet. And thence due west 76 and 300ths chains to the beach. That would be over here on Puget Sound. And then following the meandering of the beach northerly, northwesterly, and easterly to the place of beginning, containing 320 acres of land, and I hate to say this, excepting and reserving 3 town lots in the former town of Alki, which said lots have been heretofore sold to Adam Bowles. So, I don't know who Adam Bowles is, I don't know where Adam Bowles is, but somewhere in history, he's your partner. So, here's several copies. Please distribute them amongst yourselves, and it's just an acknowledgement of indebtedness to the family for the historical asset that you have granted us.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, there's one for everyone.
Thank you, Phil.
You're welcome.
And now I'd love to have Tasia come up and talk to you about what our plans are for these letters and the potential of them.
Well, I want to start by thanking the family again on behalf of the Historical Society. This is an incredibly important addition to our collection here at the Historical Society. We hold all the objects in our collection in the public trust, so that means that we are the stewards of these objects on behalf of the community. So really, your donation means that these letters are coming home back to the people who live on this land. And for that, you should feel very proud of yourselves. Very Yeah, you know, these letters are important for a number of reasons, one of which is definitely what Phil talked about. These letters represent unpublished material that really have not been examined by historians. You know, the process of doing history research is never done, and history is one way for us to understand our present, so how we got here, and maybe plan a better path for our future. And Phil is definitely in the weeds, you know, doing that research, and I know I will be as well over the coming months. But also by bringing these back to the Historical Society, that means that other people from the community from all over the world can really come and see firsthand, learn from these letters, and use that to reinterpret the history of this really formative period in Seattle history. So with that being said, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what some of our plans are for these letters. One of the things that we do with any of our collections is sort of a dual mandate on us from the community. That is preservation of the physical objects and access to them. So with that in mind, on Tuesday we actually have a professional conservator who's going to come visit us, take a look at the letters, and give us a recommendation on what a paper conservator could do to stabilize the letters, because like Chris said, some of them are in quite fragile condition. Do some cleaning so they'll be a little bit easier to transcribe, and do some other work that might involve mold mitigation to make sure that that doesn't spread. The second thing that Rachel and I will be working on, and with the help of some of our volunteers, is to go ahead and transcribe the letters that haven't been transcribed already, and then put those online so anyone, wherever they are, can take a look at these letters and you know, learn more about not only Doc Maynard, you know, his relationship with the people here, but also his relationship with the Duwamish as well. Yeah, I kind of want to close by saying, you know, these records are so important because of the information they hold, but they're also incredibly unique because they are a physical link to our past. Not much survives from that early period of Seattle's history in the 1850s. And to have a letter that was being written while Doc Maynard and Chief Seattle were sitting in the same room, I think is something that's quite special, and something that will ignite the imaginations and the enthusiasm of anyone who gets to see it. So again, thank you so much. We promise to take good care of it.
Well, that really concludes our program. I don't know if anybody would have any questions to ask. Patrick?
What's the range of dates? What's the earliest letter? What's the latest letter in the collection?
The first one is from St. Joseph, Missouri, and he's still on his way out here, 1850. And his last letter, I think, was 1873, which was the year he died. And then maybe 10 years after that from Catherine. So probably 1880, late 1870s.
There's actually an 1892.
Is there? 1892.
And
How many second half of the 19th century.
Yeah.
How many letters, Chris?
Ooh, total?
I think 32.
32? Okay.
Were these letters written in ink or pencil, charcoal? How does the medium affect their durability and their legibility?
They were all in pen. Yeah, they got wet and then they molded. Some of them are in a lot better shape than others. They're just a treat to transcribe because you can read his handwriting pretty well. But the ones that are moldy are going to need some work.
Chris got an incredible amount of stuff off the moldy ones.
Well, I have a question maybe for Phil. where Phil is.
He's back there.
So, yeah, in one of the letters, Doc refers to having taken in a young girl. We may decide to keep her, I think was the terminology. Do you have any knowledge of this little girl or who she was or where she ended up?
No, but I was struck by the same sentence as you have been. I don't know, the records, to my reading of Seattle history from that day, people who have written about it, say nothing about that. I haven't,
Yeah.
that's one of the great questions to be answered. And the question is, was she Native American? Or was she a daughter of some immigrant who lost their parents? There's 15 subsidiary questions.
Yes.
But you're right, what's the story here?
Well, maybe those untranscribed letters will have more information.
Right.
Any other questions?
It might be interesting to hear, Chris, Mary, and Phil, what in these letters so far that you know relates to the house.
To that
The house on 64th. That used to be on the beach.
Yes. I think that one thing that I got out of the letters was the need to almost take all the information and see it in a linear form, because I couldn't tell, I don't know, maybe you could, sometimes if we were overlapping I bought this, I've sold that, I traded that, I built a house, here's a house for you, Henry, we've got everything you need here. It burned down, which was which, I don't know. Did you get any more sense?
I don't remember having that kind of trouble with it.
Oh.
There is
That's just me.
There is a clear
No?
reference to the other house burning down.
Right.
And I thought there was something about the new house, but I'm not clear on.
And then because they had
That's a good
a
question.
house at Broadway and Cherry, they had a house on Main between King and Jackson or something thereabouts. How many houses did they have? And he refers to having a number of houses to Henry when the big house burned down. We still have these, it's just not near the farm. So, I don't know if that really answered any question.
No, it was interesting information.
Phil has a thought here.
Okay.
You raise a great question. Before Doc Maynard arrived at Alki, Charles Terry was here for several years, beginning in 1851, and he departed the scene around 1855. Greg Lang, a local Seattle historian, has been doing a lot of work in trying to understand what Charles Terry preserved from the original immigrant party that landed in November 1853, particularly those cabins that were built. These letters give us new insight into what actually was built. My understanding of local Seattle history was that there was only one house out here that burned down in February of 1858. But Doc Maynard tells us that there was an earlier house that burned down. And he also tells us that there are two other houses sitting around here.
Right. Sitting around.
And then he says in the letter about living in a store.
Right.
Greg might have something in addition to offer these elementary quotations out of that one Maynard letter.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, what's so wonderful is that in 1858, he's describing all of these buildings, and I suspect that almost all of those buildings were built when there was a town of Alki. When the town of Alki existed here, beyond just when Terry got here in 1851, And he was in partnership with Lowe, and they had a store on the point. And then in 1853, Lowe left, he moved down to California, excuse me, first down to Olympia, and I think later they moved down to California. Anyway, right after that, I think Terry started to promote this as a town site, and so these other buildings were built, and there were shops, right? So there was a ship's chandlery shop, there was a general store, no doubt there was a tavern or two that were built. And the people who built them would live in the back, and then their store would be in the front. And so Maynard is going through and listing all of these buildings that were on the point, and it's almost a guarantee that nearly all of them, if not all of them, were actually part of that town of Alki. The town of Alki basically dissolved in before the Native American Indian Wars that occurred, because everybody was moving over to Seattle. Seattle was growing so quickly that kind of Alki was left in the backwater. And so everybody kind of abandoned Alki and moved over to Seattle or moved elsewhere.
And that was 1856?
Yeah, so there was a election precinct here at Alki Point where people voted, and in the late summer of 1855, there were some people that were signed up to be judges and things. The county commissioners did that. Everyone else got paid, but the people who were judged in the other precincts in the county, but the people that were out Alki were not paid. And I think what happened is that there was a gold rush over in Colville on the other side of the mountains. And again, I'm just guessing this, but the town was kind of breaking down, and when they saw dollar signs, they all left and skedaddled over the mountains. And I don't know that for certain, but I suspect that may have been what happened, because people were, $3 was what they were going to be paid for their day's service to be election judges, and that would be something that you wouldn't walk away from, right? You know, if you were around, you would definitely get paid. Well, these people never got that payment, so I suspect they left. So anyway, what is so fabulous about those letters, that it does actually give the dimensions of all the buildings, and those were probably all the shops and the businesses that were here at that time. So.
Thank you very much. And before we, okay, you have another question?
Yes.
Been trying to, Barry.
Are there dates on these letters?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering too about, are each one of the letters dated?
Yeah,
Or are some not?
There's a list of all the letters and dates.
And
There's only a few that we couldn't, you couldn't find any dates to the very end. But there's just one or two.
Before we adjourn for champagne toast, I'd want to introduce the current owner of the Maynard house, Marty who has lovingly restored that beautiful home. It's incredible. And we're going to, our home tour this year will be at the Maynard house in August, so get to enjoy that. So are there any other questions before we go have a
Question
toast?
for you guys. So at some point, might there be an exhibition here at the museum that people can come and see?
We definitely can.
Yeah, so we definitely are going to use this in some sort of programming, whether it be an exhibit. We have been talking with the family about potentially publishing a book with these letters and sort of historical analysis to go along with the letters from multiple perspectives. So we're still figuring out the details of all that, but you know, these letters are too important to collect dust. We definitely want to put them out there and you know, do some scholarship on them.
And the transcribed letters will be available to the public.
Absolutely, yeah.
Once we get them all transcribed. Yes.
I know this isn't the antique roadshow, but has the financial amount been discussed of what this collection is worth?
So for actually legal reasons, we as an organization can't put a value on any objects accepted into the collection.
But the family could.
They could. They would have to get an outside appraiser.
I see.
Yeah. I mean, they are
Priceless.
truly priceless.
To the family.
We just want the land back.
Well, it's so nice.
You might have to find Adam Bowles.
That's right.
Where's that post, Phil?
Thank you all for coming. What a lovely community get together and to
Thank
really
you.
celebrate the beginning of a great city. So we have champagne, Martinelli's, some seltzers out there. We hope you'll stay around and have a little refreshment and we can get acquainted even more. So thank you all.
Thank you.